and sit.
This FXR does not have the original front forks in it. It's got some forks from another type of motorcycle that I'm not sure which one it is. You guys know?
That's some Italian made. No, they're universal basically.
Is there a name on those things?
Paioli. Oh, that's it.
So we're going to take these apart, show you exactly what we're doing as much as we can. Dudes and dudettes, let's get to work. We did one fork already. That one's done completely. And it was a practice run to see if we could get this thing done the way it's supposed to be done. We won't mention the damage that we caused it. No, we didn't. And so what we did was we took it apart to see how it would work, because this is totally different than the standard front forks of a Harley Davidson, especially the FXR. Basically they're all the same, but this is Italian, so that means that we had to figure out how the hell we put that together. Actually take it apart and then put it together. We're going to show you exactly how this one comes apart. Very simple actually, but you have a few little things that you have to take into account. One of them is that it's in more pieces than a regular front fork. Ain't that right, Mr.
It took me a while to figure that out.
Yeah.
No, but there are some differences between the PDF that we have and the actual fork that we have in our hands.
Right.
So
it's a universal fork,
which means does it fit any bike in this universe?
Yeah, but the inside is based on the type of vehicle it's for, so they can adjust the spring thingy.
The spring length is varies. I think there's one fork for many bikes, so they vary the spring length.
Yeah, and then they put in a kind of a large tube spacer.
Yeah, we have the spacer equivalent.
So this is what you have to do. You loosen up the cap. We did that already when it was still in the trees, because it makes it easier. And after that, you take a
21 spanner and a 17. It's metric.
Yeah. It's all metric because it's from Italy. Now you take off the cap on the top. You give it to Mr. M for safekeeping. He's the only one that remembers where all the stuff is. And then you unscrew the top nut. That little piece there. Once you take that off, you give it to Mr. M for safekeeping.
And
you take the spacer that's inside, also
big,
to Mr. M for safekeeping.
Yeah, and now there's a small difference with the practice run. There's a small plunger in here. So inside the damper rod, there's another rod, a hollow rod.
That's right, a smaller
and
one.
A small plunger that's fixed. It's for the returning oil, but this doesn't come out by itself. This one. So careful before we flip it.
So we take a little magnet.
Yeah, that's here's the.
And this is the little plunger that's on top. Give it to Mr. M for safekeeping.
Yes, indeed.
And then we drain the oil. And of course we're going to let the oil drain as much as possible. There's the inner rod. Very small inner rod.
Hollow.
It's hollow because the oil has to go through, obviously. Then you rotate it, turn it upside down, let it drain out, and you give it to Mr. M for safekeeping.
Correctamundo.
We're off to the bar.
And we're off to the bar. Alright, so now that we got all the oil drained, we're going to take off the dust cap. Be careful you don't damage the aluminum. So once you take off the dust cap, you have a clip on the inside of your fork. Just like all other forks. It's exactly the same. You take that out. It's quite easy. Find the opening and just take it right out there.
And
you give it to Mr. M for safekeeping. And then you pull it up and you slam it upwards. The best part is to keep it down between your legs if you have nothing else, and just slam it up. It's supposed to slam out this inner seal. There you go. Now we have all the parts scattered all over the floor. So you take the top tube, you give it to Mr. M for safekeeping. And then you take off the seal.
And you throw it away.
And this one you throw away, because you're not going to use that anymore. Then you take off a ring, a washer type.
And a spacer.
With a spacer. And you give it to Mr. M for safekeeping.
No, cleaning.
Ah, that comes later. To turn it around and drain it again, because there's still oil in it. And you just keep repeating that step until as much oil is out as possible. And you let Mr. M clean up the rest. All right, now listen carefully to this next step. This is something that we encountered and we couldn't figure out what the hell was going on. But seeing as this front fork comes in many different parts, we figured out what the problem was, and then we had to figure out how to fix that problem. So this is what we did. Watch this.
We couldn't get a seal in place, the inner seal here. No matter how much we hammered it. Of course, it turns out that this outer ring is also separate. So the seal goes actually here.
And then the rest slides up. But obviously on the inside of that ring, there's a little groove where you have to put the clip on. But every time we tried to hit it down, that whole piece went down with it. So we couldn't get it in there. So what we did now was we braced the outer ring, which is that one, in a wooden bench clamp, and we leveled it out.
Can you hold it?
And then we hit it in there carefully. And it went like a charm once we figured that out.
This one slides on the inside. Because if you have hard chromed steel sliding against aluminum, it will wear it out. So it's basically a bearing. It's a linear bearing actually.
Okay.
You can see it as a bearing. So this slides against the aluminum. It's to fill the gap and functions sort of a bearing-like. Because now you have free play here.
Right.
So this one goes in.
And that spaces it right out.
And fills it, and this one of course to hold it in place. But then it spaces it out. And it functions, of course, this one is now at the bottom.
Right.
So you have free play on top. But then it's caught between those two, and there's less friction on the leg, let's say less free play on the leg when it's moving.
Alright, so what we do is we have our wooden vise so that we don't damage any of the aluminum around there. And we level it off so that both sides are braced so that it can't go down, so that we don't slam the seal past what it's supposed to be. This is the inner seal.
This one has two springs, so one on the outside, the other one is nicely on the inside. So there's a double lip.
And this is the seal that keeps the oil from running up
this
the fork.
That closes off this compartment.
It closes off the whole compartment so that the oil doesn't come out of that area. Okay, these forks, they require 485 milliliters of oil. Very important, very important. When you're replacing your seals, there's a chance that you could probably damage the seal as you're putting it over the fork. This is what we do. We got a little piece of plastic, and I'm going to show you. And that is from, I don't know.
That's a package for earphones or something.
Yeah, anything, as long as it's thin and it's plastic. So what we do is we wrap it around.
It's a little bit too small, but doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, because when you put the seal on there, the sharp edge could possibly damage. This helps really well if you have some rust forming on the top of your forks.
So anyway, I do it like this, in the point.
You put the seal over it and you work it down, and there you go. And there's no damage to the seal. Well, the vise is going to keep the ring, this part of the fork, in place so it doesn't go down when you tap that down. Now we have a special tool that we bought especially for this situation. Now we have one little issue, is that these forks are pretty fat, so this thing just barely fits on there.
So here I'm there. I've reached my point. Yep, I'm there.
So on the inside, when you see that groove on the inside, then you know you're there. So what we have here is the part that slams into the seal. Now you'll notice that it's kind of slanted, and the reason that it's slanted at the edges is that the seal itself, if you're going to start hitting the inside of the seal, you're going to damage the seal. So you want to hit it on the outside of the seal so that it seats down without damaging the inside, so that you have no leakage whatsoever. This is what it looks like. We can see it right at the outside.
An outer ring.
On the outer ring, so that it doesn't hit the inside and damaging the little rubber lip that's on the top here.
The same as with the buell, the metal, it's L-shaped. So the metal goes from here to here, and this is all metal. It's an L form.
That's right.
So if you hit it here, you can bend it again. That's just with the
It's the same
other.
as it's
Same
the
principle.
Yeah. You were like really bright there for a second. You're so bright, your parents called you Sonny.
Yeah.
So that you put on your clip, you make sure it gets inside the groove. This is to hold the seal in place when your bike's going up and down over the potholes, over the speed bumps and stuff like that. Once you have the inner seal in there, the one that seals completely off so that no oil comes out anymore, then it's very important that you get that clip in there, like I said. Once that clip in there, there's only one more step you got to do to make sure that it stays completely sealed. What you got to remember is that when you're riding down the highway, all kinds of grungy shit starts hitting your forks. So what they have invented is a seal that goes on top of the other seal. This is called the dust cap. The dust cap keeps all the muck and shit and stones and sand and everything out to almost perfect. So this is what the dust cap looks like. It's got a higher ring, and at the bottom here, or on the edges, it's got this edge here that seats on top of this part. Now when you get your new seals and your dust caps and stuff, your seals come with a little tiny package. Why don't you grab me a package and I'll show the folks.
Might, not
You
all.
get a little, yeah, you might, not all of them. You get this little sachet of long life oil seal lubricant. This is what you use to, or you could use oil if you don't have anything else. This is what you use to coat the inner seal so that it slides nice and easily over your fork. The next step is to put it in the oil. No, we measured it out to 485 milliliters, sorry.
It's just a small tip.
When you put in your first amount, then what you got to do is mark it. Right there, that's about 485 milliliters. This way, you fill out.
The second one equally.
Yeah, and it's very important to do it equally.
Well, if you have too much, it's always worse than too little.
That's right. And tell us why that is.
It will be too stiff. So if you go a puddle, you'll be launched back.
Once you put the oil in there, there's one last thing you have to do. Obviously, when you're pouring oil in there, it's going to get full of air. You don't want air in there. So what you do is you start pumping it up and down, just like Mr. B's doing.
Is it in yet?
Yeah, it is.
Just drop it, and it's supposed to gradually go to the bottom, and then you know you got your air out. So now that we got the air out, next step is to replace the spring. Now this spring is quite short, and it's a lot easier to do than most front forks, because most front forks, they stick out, where you have to put the end cap on and you have to push it down with a lot of force. After that, we have another tube that we took out before, which is the spacer. You put that on there. The nut that we had, the tube nut, gets put back on there. Okay, so the reason we keep it on an angle is that so it doesn't slide down as fast.
The inner.
So we have
inner damper rod doesn't.
The damper rod doesn't slide down instantly where you can't grab it and tighten it up. So you tighten that as much as you can with your hands until it can't tighten anymore. And then you have a little bit of a gap, around 2 to 3 millimeters. Once you have it all tightened up as much as you can with the hand, you take your inner dampening rod and you drop it right in there. And also that goes right in there. Bang. Then you put in your plunger, stick that in there, and then you put on the cap again.
And tight.
Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. And you start turning it till it's tight. Now the next thing you do is you lift up, you lift up the inner tube and you twist on the cap.
Always by hand.
Always by hand, because you don't want to ruin the threads. So always by hand as much as you can go till the end. And ladies and gentlemen, that is how you do it. And we'll catch you guys on the next episode of replacing the forks. Next week what we're going to do is put the forks back in the trees, and we're going to jiggle it up and down to see if there's any play in the triples. If there's not, then we have cured that issue and we won't have to buy new bearings for the triples. So stick around for that episode, and we'll catch you on the flip side.